Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday.
Hello.
Hey, Terrence. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Terrence, I'm Brian. I'm excited for you to meet Terrence. Terrence is a musician as well.
Oh, all
Yeah, I'm
right,
also a
far out.
musician as well.
Excellent, excellent.
And nice to meet you.
The pleasure is mine. What's your preferred instrument?
I play trombone
Oh, that's a difficult instrument. I
and
don't know how you do that.
sometimes synthesizer too as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely, far
And I
out.
compose music.
Really? Oh,
Yes.
excellent, lovely. Good, lovely, lovely. What kind of music is your go-to as far as composure?
I like jazz or classical, electronic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big jazz fan. I kind of the other day I was listening to Benny Goodman and somebody was like, "What is this?" And I was like, "This is Benny Goodman. You got to get in on this."
Yes.
So
That's awesome.
absolutely. Well, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to
Welcome,
meet you
welcome.
too. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Hi, Dana. Hi, Jeff.
Hey guys.
Hey, hey.
Jeff's joining from the East Coast as well, from Boston,
Massachusetts, actually.
Massachusetts.
Far out. Right on. I love Massachusetts, especially around fall. That's the best. You guys have got an
That's where
aces there.
Berkeley College of Music is located at.
Is
Yes.
it? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. It is.
Terrence
Uh,
goes to the Berklee College of Music online.
oh, excellent. That's lovely. That's impressive stuff. that's
Oh,
that
thanks.
that's out of my league.
I love it. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started and do a little intro and a little update from Autism Tree, and then I'm going to pass it off to you, Brian, and introduce you as our guest speaker. So let me share my screen. Hold on one second. Okay. Can everybody see that screen? Your thumbs up.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Well, a couple Zoom rules. If you are new or you haven't joined us before, or it's been a while, you can please mute yourself when you're not speaking. Usually, we recommend that when you first come in. Though for our smaller groups, you can unmute yourself at any time and ask a question, depending on our guest speakers' preferences. And we also usually have a Q&A at the end where you can unmute yourself and ask any questions, or you can type it in the chat. So we recommend speaker view for presentation. Video sharing is optional, though we love to see all your smiling faces. And you can, like I mentioned, you can type any questions or comments into the chat. I am happy to read those and relay them to our guest speaker. If you'd like to stay anonymous, that's fine too. So those are quick Zoom rules. And then quick Autism Tree update. What's going on at Autism Tree right now? I can't believe we're already in July, over halfway done with the year, and we've already had 443 brand new families who have filled out our intake form for our programs. So welcome to all of our new families if you're a new family. And I've you've never heard of Autism Tree before, we offer 20 programs. Currently 9 are in person in San Diego County, 7 are hybrid, and 4 are virtual. They're throughout the year. They have different times, and you know, uh, seasons and dates for everything. You can always check back to our social media calendars if you have any questions, or want to sign up for our upcoming events, see what's coming up. We have 14 upcoming events in July and August. That was a typo. And events this week, we have an adaptive dance class this Saturday at Taffy Studios and our Bridge to the Beach Family Day at Mission Beach. I'm so excited. This is our second Family Beach Day. This is our 10th annual year of doing our Bridge to the Beach program. So it's very special in partnership with the San Diego Lifeguards and the San Diego Junior Lifeguards. We have the junior lifeguard support, and the lifeguards bring all of the life jackets and safety equipment and also fun water equipment as well. So we're going to be doing surfing and boogie boarding and all of that fun stuff. And the whole family is welcome to attend our beach day. So that'll be this Saturday at Mission Beach, to the left of Belmont Park. We'll be on San Fernando Street. And I'm really excited for that. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. And we also have 599 videos. We're almost to 600. After this will be our 600 video on our YouTube channel, which we started really blowing up during the pandemic, of all of our, it's a huge network, a library of resources for our parents. So I highly recommend you check out our other videos. You can subscribe to get these weekly lunch and learns. We have 149 lunch and learns already uploaded and into a playlist. And today is our 150th Lunch and Learn, which I had no idea, Brian, that this is so special that you're our 150th Lunch and Learn guest. So I'm really excited to introduce Brian. I loved talking with him on the pre-call, and our executive director, Dana, who's here, but she's just listening in today. She met Brian organically out in the community, and I love for Brian to speak more about it, but he is a professional musician and a former educator. And he also shared that he is on the spectrum as well. So I'm really excited to learn from you, Brian, and hear what you got to say. And we're all here to connect today. So I'm going to pass it over to you and spotlight you, so you can tell your story.
Right on. Appreciate that very much. And I appreciate you guys having me. I really do. It's wonderful to be able to pitch into the awareness, surrounding, how we're rolling through life, like water down the river and just kind of finding our way. So I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself, and I'll promise I won't say too much, because to tell you the truth, it's not the most thrilling of tales. But I'm one of five. I have four older brothers. My parents are lovely people. I grew up in New York, as per the T-shirt might have eluded. And from a very early age, I became drawn to music, and a lot of the reason that I was drawn to music is because in a house that size with so many people, in a neighborhood that wasn't particularly always the most enjoyable place to find oneself, especially for someone who is, neurodivergent. Music was a much needed solace for me. It was a really great place to find yourself all the time. So at 6 years old, I joined a dance troupe, and they were not interested in my dancing at all, but my voice was high enough to sing a solo, and that's kind of how that all got started. When I was very young at school, in elementary school, as many of us have experienced sometimes in the past, we come to the realization that maybe our particular mentality, our methodology of learning is not always being addressed. And back in the 1980s, that was pretty normal. It was kind of learn our way or you're not learning properly. And from that very early on, unfortunately, I had a bunch of experiences in school in which I kind of felt that school was never quite as wonderful as it could be. So years later, when I kind of accidentally fell into, classroom education at a very young age, literally started working in one form or another in classroom education from, high school on. One of my basic priorities was to make sure that every student in that classroom, whatever classroom I was facilitating, was heard in the way that I wasn't. Because so many of us are, we can be unheard, for our style of communication. My priority always was, in an educational capacity, to provide as much knowledge as possible, to keep it fun, to keep the incentivization of learning present, to keep that want, that need for knowledge moving forward. But above all else, to reverse engineer an environment in which everyone felt safe, everyone felt heard, and everyone felt that they were part of the group included, no matter their differentiations. And that the differentiations that we saw on a constant basis were some of the most wonderful things that you could possibly imagine about being in a classroom. That versatile experience of bumping into people that you didn't know before, but you do know them now and you understand them far better. Maybe not agree with them on everything, maybe not be their twin, but at the same time to have just a greater understanding. And that was my priority for a long time. And a lot of that comes from, being very young. My mom was in education. She taught. And I get the distinct impression that probably her and my brand of neurodiversity are probably very similar. So it made a lot of sense to kind of walk that way. As the years went on, I took music a lot more seriously. And, as does happen in modern life, we prioritize different parts of our lives. Sometimes we're very career focused, sometimes we're very art focused. But in the last few years, I've kind of come away from education and started to take more time to kind of pursue the more expressive and artistic side of it, and kind of use it as a catharsis, because things are a little stressful these days, and everybody needs a bit of catharsis in their life, a little bit of a release, an expression and things like that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. But as far as my career, as far as education, as far as a want to continue in that particular realm, that will always be there. I always love, working with people and seeing them get it, seeing them get the idea, seeing them grasp a theory really well, and have a better understanding is to watch growth, but no less than watching a tree get taller and understanding the fulfillment of this gain that we all get. When somebody learns, even just one person learning, it just makes us all greater. But that's kind of me in a nutshell. I don't want to prattle on too far, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into that line of work, and I always love that line of work. I really have nothing but the greatest reverence for it. But these days we have to be very proactive in our educational positions and our perspectives in the classroom. And we always have to look for forward, because it's not enough to facilitate the students we've got. We've got to facilitate them, and then we've got to facilitate the next 10 years of students. It's just got to move forward. It's the only way to continue bringing about an awareness in this sense, in which people have different learning styles, and none of them are wrong. If you're learning, it isn't wrong. There's no bad learning, unless you're not learning the truth. But chances are, if you're in a classroom, you're probably getting pretty good data. So anyway, sorry, prattling, like I said.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. I do have a few questions. So, when did you move? Are you in San Diego right now?
I am indeed. Yeah.
So, are you a teacher full time still? Is that?
I've actually stepped away from the profession for right now.
Yeah. How long
So
were you for?
I'm sorry.
How long were you a teacher for?
Oh, over 20 years. So it was a long time. Yeah, it was a good stretch, and it was funny the way that I fell into it. I kind of fell into it by accident. I had a friend who was talking to me when I was in high school, and they knew that I did automotive tech and music and things like that. We are always so multifaceted. We can't just have one passion. We have to kind of chase a bunch of different things. But this person had said to me, well, you seem to be pretty good at mediating conflict. And I was like, well, I grew up in a house of conflict, and I grew up in a neighborhood that was very scrutinous of difference, so you get good at shaking it off, at managing to find another way that doesn't result in confrontation. So I go for this interview for this job, and it was being held at a school called Paul J. Ballou in New York. And half the school was abandoned because the district had cut off funding. And I went in there and I got the job because I was in the interview, and two ninth grade kids got into a fist fight. And this was in the gymnasium behind the office where I was interviewing. And the person who was interviewing me gestured, like looking at them like, what are you going to do? So I got up and I broke up the fight. And when I sat back down, she said, can you do that every day? And I said, I grew up in this neighborhood. I do this every day. And she said, you're hired. And that was how I got started. And then just kind of tumbled through, all of the different things that you've got to do to get where you need to be. But, Yeah, that was an interesting experience. So I moved out here in 2002. Um, was finished up with school and just got in my car and drove off. It seemed like a really good idea at the time, and it worked out to my benefit. And it could have really, blown back on me, but I got lucky. I've always been very fortunate that way. Um, so I kind of leapt from the nest and landed in a slightly nicer nest. So good fortune to me.
Yeah. What brought you to San Diego from New York?
That's going to be a lot sillier than the last couple of answers. uh, okay. First off, when you read about because my parents were driving around a Volkswagen bus in 1982, and everything on the radio is from 1965. So uh, at that time, so I fell in love with that kind of music, and I naturally wanted to know where this music came from, and all of it pointed at L.A. and San Francisco and San Diego and palm trees, and it's sunny and there's summer all the time. And when you're a kid and you're looking at these photographs of these places and these people living these fascinating lives, in a gray corner of Long Island, which is not quite as easily romanticized in the dead of winter, you can't help but let your mind wander into the idea of what would life be like in this place? Are there more people like that there? Is this energy, this communal effort of artistic expression still present? Is it still on the menu? And then, of course, when you're a kid, you're watching television, and this was a long time ago. You're watching Chips or something like that because that show is awesome, no matter how silly it is. And everything is this bleached white freeway and people driving convertibles and just the vitality of the environment. So I was sitting one day and I was talking to my dad while we were on the subway into Manhattan to go watch a show off of Broadway. I think it was Carmen, the opera. And as we were driving out there, I said to my dad, "You know what? I'm gonna move. I'm gonna move to California. You wait and see." I think I was about 21, and he was just like, "Good." And my dad's a very polite, well-spoken, quiet fella. He's kind of this slim fella who always wears Irish sweaters, and he's always charming, but he's not. He's a very selfless person. He's not pretentious at all. He's just kind of very, I am who I am. So when he kind of came at me that way, it was a bit shocking because I was like, ooh, okay, that was like he really leapt on it. And he called me on it. He says, "You don't do it now, you're not gonna. You don't leave now, you're not gonna. You'll be here until you're 50 at the local watering hole hanging out with high school friends." And high school friends are great, but that wasn't what I wanted. So I turned around and I said, "Well, fine." And he said, "Well, good." I said, "Fine then. I'm going to move tomorrow." And he said, "Well, no, don't go tomorrow. Your mother wants you here for Christmas." Um, so I said, "Okay." So I stayed for another week. And then at 3 in the morning on a Monday, I got in the car and I just drove away. And that was it. And I drove all the way out here. It took about a week and a half. I didn't know what day it was. And I don't know how many of us are coming from the San Diego area, but I apparently took a wrong turn and I wound up in this majestic place with hills and open meadows and cows and horses and all this sort of stuff. And I went up to a gas station attendant and I said, "What magical land is this?" And he goes, "You're in Poway." And I was like, "Poway, far out." I was like, "This is wondrous." Now, of course, Poway is a little bit different. It's where you go to get lumber, or you kind of driving through on the highway 67. But to me at that moment, it was just the most magical place I'd ever seen. So I figured out how I got lost. I got back in the car and I drove all the way to La Jolla Shores and just walked right into the water. I'd never seen the Pacific Ocean in my life. And it was such a surreal moment to finally at last be in this place that was but a dream for me for a decade or more. Uh, the realization that you thought of something and it came to be was very different to me because childhood sometimes is not as radiant and as wondrous as we wish that it could be. So when you do finally all of a sudden come across that Christmas present that is what happens to you in your life when things go the right way and you're shown that it can after a long time where you were only shown that it can't. You turn around and you say, what else is possible? You know, and then you find out what is and what isn't, and it's a lot of fun in the meantime. But yeah, so I kind of fell out here by accident and got really fortunate that you know, to this day, it seems to be that the universe is like, all right, we got you, you know, like, you know, we'll make sure you're kind of still going in the right direction, all that sort of jazz. But yeah, so that's how I got out here. Weird enough.
Love it.
So it's my dad's fault. He dared me.
I love hearing about your dad, and you mentioned your mom as well. Did I hear it correctly that you said that she was like a certain brand of neurodiverse too? Did you mention that?
We
Or
didn't, yes, we did. We didn't understand it though. And that's what kind of still rings for me. There was so much more that she could have done. Um, there was so much more that she wanted to achieve. But the world that she existed in, you know, they didn't use the right words to describe unique individuals. Um, and so she hid a lot of that. She masked a lot. And that was really tiresome for her. But she could not be stopped from being just this luminous source of energy who was more than happy to completely destroy my older brothers in basketball whenever they were feeling a bit more confident than they should have. You know, she was a tomboy from birth, and kind of as we came along, I feel like she was more comfortable to be the person that she was all along, but was never permitted to be. Um, so I'm certain that she was on the spectrum because she and I share a lot of behavioral similarities. You know, our neuroses are not much different. And the truth of it is that, you know, if an acorn falls off a tree, it's not much different than the tree itself, no matter how far it's put out by a branch or wind or a squirrel that carries it off. It doesn't matter. You know, you are who you are, and you can grow with it or you can fight it. And I think she had to fight it a lot more than she got a chance to grow it, you know. But in years later, she was always, you know, free to around us be as silly and ridiculous as she always wanted to be, you know, in conventional settings, you know. And I think she did a lot for students that she had. You know, she passed away some years ago, and unfortunately had been ill for a while, and was stuck in a wheelchair, and you know, not fun. But the day she passed away, I went to go call a family member that she had had years ago, and they were upset, but they weren't particularly downtrodden, and it struck me odd. But then the wave of students that she had from years before, 20 years earlier, 30 years earlier, all started calling family members, whatever they could find, whoever's number they had. And there was just this outpouring of people being like, you don't understand what your mom did for me. Like, whether it was a single occurrence in which a student was being shamed for having an outburst, which at the time we didn't realize was probably a student having a sensory meltdown. And she would step in and she'd kind of sideline them and pull them out of the group and try to bring them back down again, try to get, you know, the amygdala hijack to back off so that, so that the student can kind of come back to the table and feel whole without feeling embarrassed. And there were a lot of people that called up when she passed away and talked about that, whether it be once or 10 times, or we had some students that were friends with my brothers, and they had no shortage of times where they would show up, and you know, it was a rough neighborhood. Some of the parents were really stressed out and really kind of toxifying their situation. And my mom, as well as my dad, you know, a lot of the times they were the parents that you went to the house to go hang out with one of the brothers, but you wound up talking to the parents, you know, because my parents were not the type to just say, get over it. You know, they were the type to say, okay, talk to me about it, you know, and relieve that pressure instead of exacerbating it, instead of making it worse. Um, so there's a lot to say about my mom, but if there's one thing I can say is that she left this place in a far better state than she found it, and she did it after having a very, very difficult childhood, um, with a lot of trauma and a lot of difficulty, and she stopped that cycle and instead created an environment for her sons where we were free to be as idiotic on a common basis as we were, running through walls and throwing stuff through windows and always making a mess of the place and destroying my dad's record collection and all this sort of stuff. And they never held it against it. They never said I told you so. They just tried to help you find a better way. So I really liked that when my mom passed away, there was that response. I think that's something that we forget, is that we would all get that response. We all talk to people in that way. We bump into people and we try to help as best we can. And I think sometimes it's easy to forget the effect that we have in that way. Sometimes this world focuses on the negative more than anything else.
Your parents both sound like angels, earth angels.
Yeah, they're pretty rad.
Their legacy is living through you. I feel it.
We got really lucky. I'm not saying that they're perfect. Nobody is, but they were a great deal of fun, and they introduced us to a lot of really great music, and it was it was chaos all the time in that house when we were kids. But it was fun chaos. It was never rude or mean spirited or anything like that. It was always just kind of this circus, and I think that that's what my parents liked. I asked my dad once, I was like, why did you have 5 boys? What were you thinking? He's like, well, we kept trying to have a girl. And I was like, well, yeah, you're not getting any sense that way. Oh, I'm sorry, the cats just jumped all over the desk. But I asked him, I was like, did you ever get exhausted? Were you ever just like, what have we done to ourselves? And he said, no. He said, it was wonderful. It was this great big old house that was kind of falling apart all the time, and it was noisy. And you got 5 boys, and each one of them's bringing home 4 or 5 friends every night. So there would be nights where you had 20 kids sitting around this place. My mom would see all these weird ruffians wandering through the door, and she'd pour more pasta in this huge pot that looked like something that you would, like a cauldron type of thing. And we didn't have a lot of money for pasta sauce, so she'd throw a little bit of butter and salt and pepper in there, and she'd feed everybody. And we'd all sit around and eat and make fun of each other, and it was great fun. And, it was also a big musician's house. All my brothers played music. So I'd be sitting there at 8 years old, and across from me would be the guitar player for Silas Lang, with hair down to his waist, and he'd look all like crazy and tatted up. And, he's like 19, and I'm like, who is this guy? And then he'd turn around and be like, thanks for the pasta, Mrs. Reilly. And he'd keep eating, and he was happy to be there and everything like that. So, you always had a lot of interesting influences, just strange people blowing through this place, so it was a lot of fun, and they made it great. They weren't perfect, but they did exactly what they set out to do, which was not have the experience that they had when they were kids and they felt that disconnect. Instead, they wanted it to be like, hey, this place isn't perfect. It's messy. There's a cat over there, 3 dogs over there, and a parakeet that just won't seem to go back in its cage. But at the same time, it was so comfortable. It was like living in the middle of a city, but knowing that everybody in this city was looking out for you. So it was always really cool that way.
They built a good home.
They did.
One of the questions that somebody asked is, you seem extremely socially adept, a people person. Can you offer any advice or help for young men who are facing social difficulties?
Oh, I face it every day. Every single day, I got to tell you. You've got to, well, no one has to do anything as per my suggestions. But what I find helps for me is that for a long time, I had this expectation of myself to be flawless and perfect and sociable all the time, and to never let anybody down. But what I never realized is that I also needed to focus on not letting myself down. There are finite levels of energy that a person has in a social capacity. I have a finite level of energy in a social capacity. So as I've gotten older, I wouldn't say that anything ever became a non-issue, but I would say that with the help of good friends who understood me really well, that I started to understand that there are times where you have to make an agreement with yourself that sometimes you need the night off. Sometimes you just, you have to sit there and say, I'm going to go when I want to, when I feel that I'm prepared to do it, not when I feel like I owe it to anybody. Because when it really shakes out, it's your life and your life alone. And the objective is to have a beautiful experience every single day until those experiences become something else and we go somewhere else. But as far as, being amicable in a group, I spent so much time trying to be people that I wasn't. And I was not particularly good at that. I think the big thing is just take a breath, think about what you need to in a social situation to be comfortable, whether that be a bottle of water, which I carry around endlessly, because a lot of people don't realize I get dry mouth when I get nervous talking to people. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry. My cat has decided to investigate the camera again. I just want to make sure he doesn't knock it off the tripod. Bubba, stay over there. But, kind of doing something like that. Another thing that I was doing as far as being comfortable in a social setting was just, I guess, just embracing the weird, which it turned out it wasn't that weird after all. Like I was saying before, trying to aspire to hold ourselves to a higher level. Sorry, tail. Come on, Bubba. Hang on just a second. I'm going to go ahead and get him off the table. All right, Bubba, I'm going to give you a shove. Okay, you got to go. Go on, Papa. There you go.
It's inevitable in the world of Zoom.
Yeah, well, you know what it is he wouldn't jump on my lap when I was watching a movie last night. But no, if there's a camera on, he's a self promoter. But yeah, as far as being comfortable, I'd say just give up on the idea of the manufactured concept of yourself. Just you are who you are, and if they're the right person you're talking to, they're going to resonate with what you're saying. And if they don't, then they can speak with somebody else who has, a particular line of thought that works with them best. But the idea of us trying so hard to be something, it's like Alan Watts said. And I always liked this quote because it hit me like center hard. And it really changed a lot of my thoughts. I always read Kerouac, but it's so tough to get a pearl from him. Or if you read Nietzsche, then, you're like, you feel better but depressed at the same time. It's like Kafka. But with Alan Watts, he had this one saying where he was saying that there are times where trying to do anything is the reason that we fail. When you're playing drums, for instance, if you start to think about the beat that you're playing, it falls apart. If you're surfing and you think about the wave you're riding, you fall off. Because some things work better by intuition. And he had said that too frequently in our lives, we become stuck in a situation in which the seas are rough, the water is choppy, and the impulse is to hold something that is shifting down, to put our hands upon it, to try to create stillness, to manufacture stillness. And it doesn't work because putting our hands in the water only makes more waves. But he was saying if you only allow it to rest, it'll come to a state of stillness. And when we try to be social, it's so difficult because we're going against the reality that people socialize in different ways, and that's the beauty of the world. And instead, we try to say the things that other people are saying and make the small talk or talk about the weather. And sometimes that's just not what we're thinking about. And over the last couple of years, I've just tried to make an effort to be willing to talk about whatever it is that's on my mind, whatever it is that's coming up. And I find that has a tendency, that honesty with ourselves and then therefore with other people has a tendency of kind of showing them like, oh, hey, like this is a person that not just I want to trade, gentle barbs with or talk about something, simplistic, but instead I want to have a deep conversation with this. And when that happens and that reciprocated recognition kicks in, it bolsters our confidence. It brings us up a little bit. It shows us that we're valued for who we are, not who we're meant to be, who we're trying to be. And in response, other people start to value our opinions. Everybody's got insight. Everybody's got something wonderful to say. They're just never ever given the chance to say it, or they don't know how. But if you find yourself becoming more and more honest, you might not always get the people at the table that you wanted, but you get the people at the table that you need, for your own growth, or maybe even theirs. I'm sorry if I don't know if that answers the question effectively, but
I think it definitely does. I love what you just said. I'd love to open it up to anybody else who wants to ask a question to Brian. Feel free to unmute yourself or even just say hi, introduce yourself. Anybody, any takers?
Oh yes. I'm Terrence Patridge. Nice to meet you, Brian. Just want to say thank you so much for sharing the stories with us. And I'm really sorry for your loss about your parents.
I appreciate that a great deal. You know what? Thankfully, Dad's still hanging out,
Oh,
and
that's nice.
oh, it's lovely. He's 82 now, which means sometimes we have to ask the waitress he loves IHOP, which is kind of a funny thing with my pop. But sometimes you got to repeat stuff what the waitress says because his hearing's not quite there. But chalk that up to years and years of him, loving nice loud headphones and things like that. So he and I get together and we listen to records, which is great. Or we'll do like a road trip. We did a road trip last year. We went to Oregon, and that was life-changing stuff. I'd never had conversations like that with my dad, and we learned a lot about each other, about how similar, much more similar we were and are than we realized. But yeah, my mom, unfortunately, she had MS, and you know, even though right up until the ragged edge, she was fiery and all that sort of stuff. I have the firmest of beliefs that wherever she woke up, it is spectacular, and that occasionally she probably comes to a show now and again. I feel like the Departed do that once in a while. I know that I would. Who's going to deny you music and live shows even after you pass? It's the type of thing that'll keep you around. But no, they were lovely, and thank you for that, Terrence. I appreciate
Oh,
it a lot.
that's my
Very,
pleasure,
very.
Brian.
The pleasure is mine.
Any other parents who want to say anything? I can keep going. All right, I have one more question. Oh, cool. Another question on the chat. Oh, yeah, you can type in the chat too, and I'll say the question. What live shows were you referring to, Brian, and what you were just talking about? Were you referring to anything specific?
Yeah, you know what? It was funny because I like to write. Sometimes I struggle with memory. Sometimes I think it's probably a response of stress. There have been times in my life where my stress levels got really out of hand, and stuff like that. So I like to write just as kind of a living memory, and sometimes I throw them on Instagram or whatever. But you know, when I was very little, the first time I ever got a compliment was because of a show. Uh, I was always taking things apart and stuff like that. But as much as I was mechanically inclined, it wasn't until I started playing music that my family first recognized that there was maybe something that I could do that was a bit special. So I wound up performing live from literally age 6 up until the present day, with a few short breaks in between where maybe things didn't work out the way I wanted and I needed to step away. But there was a show that I played my last year in high school. And at the time, this was everything. We were on a label that is pretty wild for an 18 or 19-year-old to wrap their head around when all they've been doing is playing music since they were 6, playing every instrument they could find, digging guitars out of trash cans. My first electric guitar I got out of a trash can, and I loved it. It was great. But there was one show in particular that stuck in my head because it was the last show that my mother ever went to. And by that time, my brothers were all in the military or had been sent overseas. And my dad just taking care of my mom. So these shows, people didn't go to anymore in my family. And the people that I usually hung out with at the shows were friends, things like that. Good friends, the family you choose. But I wouldn't blame my family. There was a lot going on, and it was far from perfect. One of my brothers was really struggling with a lot of legality. My other brothers were just searching for who am I, same as everybody else. So I went and played this show, and it was a 1,200 person auditorium. And it was the first time ever that I walked out onto a stage and people applauded before you played a note. They applauded just because you were there. And it was the most wonderful way to start a show. And this place was loaded. It was massive. It was tremendous. I was having a heart attack on stage. And so we played the show, and it went wonderfully, and the place just erupts. And after every show, we would go to this diner on this forgotten road in a place called Babylon, New York. And me and my friends would go there and play. So we'd go there and order all the unhealthy food that 18 and 19-year-olds eat when they do that sort of thing. And we would stay out late, and we'd sit in the smoking section, even though we didn't smoke, and all this sort of stuff, acting dangerous the way teenagers love to do. But when reality crept back in, I went back home, and the front door was unlocked. It was never locked. I guess when you have, 5 full-grown boys hanging around in the house in that kind of neighborhood, nobody wants to break into that place. They just get chased back out the front door. So I didn't even have a house key most of my life. I walked in, and the kitchen light was on. It's always on. And the reason that this pops into my mind is because I'd written about it about 2 weeks ago. And in the middle of the kitchen table, there was always this salt and pepper shaker that looked like something from McDonald's in 1980. And then there was a little scrap of paper with a fold in it. And I don't know why, for some reason, I just focused on it. So I wandered over and I opened up the paper, and it said, "You were wonderful." And it was a note from my mom, who I didn't know had gone to the show, even though she was having trouble walking and had a cane. And she was about 46 or 47 at the time. She's barely older than I am right now. And yeah, she stayed for the show, and she sat there, and she didn't want to bother me by distracting me from friends. So after the show was done, she went home and just left a note on the table. And it was the last show that she ever went to. It was the last show that any of my family ever went to. Because, just after that, I moved to California. Shows are 3,000 miles away. But the thing is that I was saying to a friend that there are times where I feel like she still shows up, and she's just standing in the back, and she doesn't want to bother you, while you're talking to your friends. So after I get done, maybe she just wanders out into the streets. She was born in the Bronx, and, empty city streets in the night were her idea of heaven, So I can't help but feel like she pops up now and again. She was always the one in the family that never told you what you couldn't do, just focused on telling you what was possible, if only you just wanted to lean into it. So when I talk about shows, that's what I mean, and luckily enough, with COVID, everything slowed down. But then all of a sudden, the last 7 or 8 months, all of a sudden the shows just started happening again. I don't know why. I can't figure it out. Maybe because I wrote a more honest record or something like that. But the truth of it is that I was playing a show, just a few days ago, and the response was, I wouldn't say it was a long time coming, but I'd say that it was something that I was anticipating for a long time, to be able to really be on stage as myself, not trying to be a different act, sound like something else, but instead to sound like myself. And I just felt like she was there. It just felt like she was there. It sounds odd, but it's true.
I love that. Yeah, she's your guardian angel.
Everybody's got 1 or 2, 5 if you're lucky.
Somebody said in the chat, great story. You are a very talented storyteller.
Oh, it's just because I'm Irish. Irish people prattle on. We go on for days. If words were money, we would never have to work.
Emily wants to speak to you, so I'm going to ask her to unmute. Go ahead, Emily, whenever you're ready. I can only ask to unmute. You're still muted. Oh no, it's not. We still can't hear you.
Rebecca, while we're waiting, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Dina. Hi.
Is Emily's settings, can she speak now?
Settings are off.
Okay.
She asked when's the next show.
Oh, let's see. I think it's this Friday. I totally forgot. I totally forgot about that. It's this Friday. We just got added to a show at a place called Poorhouse in Oceanside, California. And the reason is that the first show we did was just a test. And it was a Monday night at a really good venue here in San Diego. And we thought we would get like 10 people because that's always what you get on your first show. But the place like nearly sold out. So we didn't have a plan. And I was like, oh, okay, we've got something here. We need to rush. So we've been jumping in with other bands. But yeah, this Friday we've got one at Oceanside. And we just released a record last 2 weeks ago on the 17th titled We Were Promised Rockets. And it's a rock and roll record. So it's got noisy stuff on it and silly guitar solos and stuff like that. But I'm really proud of it just because I like that the lyrics are more forthcoming. There's one song called Death Letter, and it talks about, that we are not permanent. And that I like the idea that in a song, you can be, try to be helpful and try to be understanding. And it doesn't matter if it's 100 years from now, somebody hopefully will hear it and get something out of it, stuff like that. But yeah, the next show is on Friday. We actually had a session yesterday at one of the studios here in town. And I was going in and I was like, oh, I was kind of nervous because, you're like, oh, well, what if we did really great on night one and we can't recapture that, But the guys that I've got playing with me are such wonderful and intuitive players. And to them, it's a playground. And they just make all these fantastic noises. So really lucky in that way. But yeah, on Friday, I totally forgot about that.
Now, what's your band name?
The band is called The Film Company. And we called it The Film Company because, bands always have changing staff, especially, as we get older. There are times where I've played with musicians who have told me flat out, like, hey, I love playing in this project, but I just got an offer to tour Europe or something like that, which happens sometimes, and you've got to just jump with it. So I like the name because it alludes to the idea that it doesn't matter if people change in this band. It's still just a band of people together. And also it's a nod to the George Méliès Star Film Company, one of the first movie studios that was around that was shooting black and white, these conceptual films like The Trip to the Moon and things like that. And I always thought that period of film was so fascinating because it was without structure. They were just like, we're going to film whatever we want. It doesn't have to sound like anything. It doesn't have to look like anything. It just is going to be whatever it is. And if it's good, then it's good. And if it's not, it's not. So that's why we called it that. It's called The Film Company.
That's cool.
But
there's one more question, and then I want to pass it to Dana to end us off. But what the question is, what do you feel are your personal difficulties related to being on the spectrum? How does neurodiversity affect your life? And then how did you overcome these challenges?
Well, I don't know that I will ever overcome those challenges in an absolute way. And I've stopped trying to find a way to do that. Obviously there are times in which being on the spectrum has a detrimental effect. But lately I've started to realize that a lot of this is just, us focusing on our wrong power or something like that. But social anxiety has been a big thing that I've had to contend with, because as much as I've tried in the past, there were a lot of times where, as a young person, or even more recently, you do what other people, what you think they would expect. And that's what winds up throwing you off. With the social anxiety thing, I think the big deal with that is that, essentially, sorry, I keep hearing cat. So, with my own, sorry, I'm having trouble describing it exactly, but I guess overcoming social anxiety more for me was a state of conditioning. Because I really suffer from that a lot. And I have audio sensory issues, which are kind of tricky to manage when you're at a show and there's loud volume and people are kind of shouting into your ear, because they want to talk to you. And I love that. But at the same time, I'm like, whoa, it's a lot to handle. There are times where my audio sensory will make it so that my social anxiety at a show really steps up, and I almost go into fight or flight mode. So what I've done to kind of work against that is, allowed myself to leave whenever I want. I've made a deal with myself at parties or at shows or at social functions, work functions, whatever it is, where I've arranged in such a way that I made a deal with myself that I was going to listen to my gut, listen to my intuition. And if at any point I started to get the inklings of, you know what, not right now, that I wouldn't punish myself for that, that I would accept that that was my choice to make. Because for so many years, I'd say, well, you've got to stay to the end of the show. You've got to stay long enough at the party. You have to talk to a certain amount of people, because as is a tendency with us, sometimes we have a proclivity to quantify our societal need, to fit in with everybody else. But that was a big thing for me, was making a deal with myself that there was no requirement. I could be there for just a fleeting moment, 5 minutes. I could walk in, be seen, say hi to a couple people. And if I felt like that was all I needed, then I could leave. And once I made that deal with myself, the funniest thing happened. I stopped leaving early. I started just allowing the conversations to transpire. I stopped trying to be in control of everything, including my own emotions, in a setting in which controlling your emotions is not just so simple. So if I start to feel overwhelmed, I call it. For so many years, my social anxiety was being amplified by my reaction when I became exhausted. So these days, I really fight it by just telling myself, I'm going to be whoever it is that I am. I'm not going to try to fit into a niche. I'm not going to quantitatively satisfy this party by being around long enough to entertain people. I'm going to go there as long as I want to. And when I'm ready to leave, I'll say my goodbyes and I'll leave. And once I made that agreement, the stress, the pressure was off. And it was like flipping a switch. I wouldn't say that I don't have social anxiety now. It's something that I still have to struggle against. And sometimes maybe I make it look easy, and sometimes it's not, because, we've all learned to mask so much based on our upbringing or where we're from. But making that deal with myself was huge. It took the weight off. There was no pressure at that point. It was just allow yourself to be in the moment. And sometimes, learn to love the fact that people are happy to have you there, even if only for 20 minutes. Worked for me.
Really good advice. Jeff on here also said that he deals with auditory and sensory processing disorder myself, and it's hard, he says. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. It's difficult. The funny thing is, though, is that playing music is kind of like cheating with audio sensory, because there are times where I'm playing, and because of the sheer volume of things coming at me and the overstimulation of having this crowd stare at you, I would turn into a windmill on stage, like a tornado, like the character from Looney Tunes, Tasmanian Devil, just spinning around and things flying everywhere, and everybody like, oh, he's a madman, and I'm like, I'm not really. I'm just enjoying myself, and this is where I feel most comfortable dancing is on stage while we're playing music. Not good dancing, mind you, but yeah, no, the audio sensory thing is really it's tricky, and sometimes we use it to kind of wake ourselves up, subtly in the morning, like coffee, and then there are times where it gets really difficult to work with. I didn't even realize what I was dealing with in audio sensory. I was in a relationship once with somebody who used to shout quite a bit, and that got really difficult to deal with. And it wasn't that person was a bad person. It's that person had learned from a young age that this is how I communicate, or that how they communicate. And that was not the way in which I optimally received, so it's just a case of unresonant tonalities of the mind, type of thing. But yeah, I feel you on the audio sensory. Absolutely. It's a rough one.
I know we're getting to time, but I want to be able to pass it off to Dana. And if you're, I hope nobody else leaves. I would love to do a group pic.
Close it out, B. We can do a picture with everyone if you want. And then I would love to say a few things.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's do that. Everybody, if you'd like to share your
I invite you in this picture because I'm gonna be saying something about you. I'm gonna bring Dr. Jacqueline Dingziak in with me.
I love it. Okay. If you'd like to share your camera, now's the time. You can just look at the camera and I'll take a screenshot. So do a little countdown. Ready? 3, 2, 1, please. Awesome.
Thank you. No worries. Okay. I don't even know who's on here. I'm sorry, I'm on my cell phone today at Dr. Jacqueline Denziak's office, which I'm grateful to her for. It's kind of crazy, you guys. I don't want to get into my own self because I'm so touched by you, Brian. I kind of want to see Brian's face on the screen. Is there a way to make sure I can see him right now?
You can spotlight him.
And I just wanted to tell you, I actually got in a car accident on Monday, and I'm kind of just in a little bit of a fog. And Brian and I met, and maybe Brian, are you okay if I talk about how we met?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And I had it in my head that today the lunch and learn was going to be this other Brian that Rebecca and I met that was all about breathing. So that was what was in my head. And then when I came on, I was a little like, whoa, okay, I need to get focused on who Brian is. And then, obviously it all came back to me, Brian, of if I have it right, the day that we met, you picked me up and you asked me about the Autism Tree van in front of my house, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
What did you say to me?
I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, I think I dove right in and was like, so who in the family is autistic? I think I said something along those lines. I might have been being a bit presumptive. But then you had discussed with me about the foundation and it's subjective. And I was like, oh, this is far out. This is something, this is the type of thing where I wish that it was happening 1,000 times over and in 1,000 different places. I hope it is, just because I appreciate the awareness of it. It's about time, because so many people are going through school and stuff like that, and their needs are not necessarily always addressed or met. So that was something that to me was just a really encouraging part of my morning. It's just even just seeing that on the door.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of brought me to tears when I was realizing everything in slow motion, like really slow motion today. I was like, what is happening? Like I am in the office where you dropped me off, Brian. I took an Uber because I have very bad anxiety if I'm going to go to the doctor, and I can't drive. So I had to go to a doctor appointment earlier today, and I Ubered, and then I walked to Jackie's to do this call today, and I was picturing it another different Brian, and I thought, what synchronicity, Brian, that I in the office you dropped me off at when I met you. And I think that you're so good at expressing how you know manage, you know, when you're stressed. And I actually honestly learned a lot from you today, and I felt really inspired by you when I met you. I felt like I 100% wanted to have you do a lunch and learn. And I always go with my heart and my gut. And really today I would just say, you've just really exploded my heart on just, every level that could possibly be covered with the way that you feel about your mom brings me to absolute tears. I mean, just I guess maybe the strongest feeling I feel on that is that I know sitting here right now that your mom is so proud of you incredibly for just this moment that I'm having with you here at Autism Tree. And without really exaggeration, I've been doing Autism Tree 21 years, and your message, your journey is what I want to see, like the red carpet sort of opened up for. Like if I can have, an Oscar night, I want you to be up there in this way that you are right now. And I feel like you've seen Terrence today, and Jeff is on here, and this is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
No, absolutely. Oh,
we
I don't know if
lost
she
her.
dropped out. Those words are too kind, too kind. I mean, it's just, I think people just need to talk about this stuff a lot more. I mean, there's so much that like was off the table for so many years. We were never supposed to talk about uh, our difficulties. We would walk into a room, and because this other person didn't understand those difficulties or had never endured them, they would kind of just get pushed aside. And I love that right now there is a raised awareness in this, that we do talk about it, that we feel comfortable about talking about social anxiety, especially as fellas, because I got to tell you, the propensity for men to feel that they cannot be free to discuss mental health or how they're feeling in a general sense is it's like standing on the railroad tracks with your eyes closed and saying, because I can't see it, it isn't there. It's just not the way that it works. So, but yeah, absolutely. Those are two kind of words for whenever she hops back on. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm texting her right now. She wants to hop back on from Jackie's phone. So I have to give her a text right now, but I know she will. In the meantime, um, I love all that you said and that you're a teacher too, because Dana and I are working together a lot on our Global Neurodiversity Conference, which we do every fall. And we feature different panels of successful people on the spectrum, and just to provide more awareness and show the successful stories. And one of our panels that we're working on this year is diversity, equity, and inclusion in education specifically, and how DEI usually doesn't include neurodiversity, and how can we, in the schools. And so we're going to do a whole panel on that.
Oh, that's going to be cool. That's where it's at. That's the fight to fight right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's always good. Yeah, absolutely. Love that.
Okay, so she is, let's see.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
Okay, I don't know why my face won't come on.
you. Your video is gonna be on.
Okay.
There we
There you
go.
go.
Thank you, Shay. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm on Jackie's phone now. I just, Brian, I felt like, can I see Brian on the screen again?
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay, thank you, B.
Do you see him?
No.
Let me try this spotlight.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, hey.
Thank you for your patience today. Yeah, I really would love to be on point about this is, you know, everything that you're doing currently, and you've worked really hard for it. I mean, how old are you right now?
I just turned 43.
Okay. Well, I'd say you're crushing it. I mean, some people will never get to that point, even that are maybe more neurotypical. I don't know. But the thing about it is just how incredible it is where you are sitting right now to be able to have learned so many things that can help so many people, including myself. I think I feel like as an individual, social exhaustion is a real situation. And it's something I think when we don't address it, it really ends up that we diminish who we actually are and what we actually might really want to do with our lives while we have the chance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the strongest conviction that I feel today is that this is what I've wanted to be doing with my life, Brian. And I think you got that. I think that's what you and I connected on is like Autism Tree is meant to have people live their best lives being exactly who they are, in the neurodiverse world. And having said that, we as a community, a neurodiverse community, we have to do a better job of getting everyone engaged to make the road paved so that you can live your best lives. Because right now, the road really isn't paved like it is for a lot of other groups that have demanded the road be paved and the opportunities be there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I think your story is such a strong one, because you're getting more gigs and you're having a more fulfilling life and you're actually seeing more response because you're being true to yourself. And that's what I want to see for everybody. And I think that's going to take a lot, still a lot of work to be done. But the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing is you've done it. It's taken you a lot to do it. I mean, you left New York, you're in California, you've made a lot of bold moves. And, you've seen when you've been in a relationship when it was a challenge, and you've really faced a lot of things that I think we all learned from today. But the greatest gift and blessing that I feel is your story today and what you're doing is literally, if I have to make a I don't know, a promotion about like what is Autism Tree about, it's about exactly what you're doing, Brian, which is really living a life on your terms, but not being silent about that you have challenges and this is how you're doing it, and not being afraid to leave when it doesn't serve you. And I think we can all take that away from today is, we're not none of us is doing a good job in our life if we have to mask ourselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that most human beings actually do mask themselves one way or another at different times for different reasons. But as the founder of Autism Tree, and this is our 150th Lunch and Learn, I would say you probably hit me the most today. And a lot of it too is because of the way you're talking about your mom. And I just try to imagine what my son would say, which is why, he's neurodiverse. And what we started when he was diagnosed 20 whatever years ago, 21 years ago now. And I just feel really blessed to honestly, I think I want to end on just saying what an honor it is for me to have been doing Autism Tree for 21 years. It's definitely what I want to be doing. And that I feel connected to your mom today. And I really mean that very reverently. But you did a phenomenal job today, Brian. And I feel like I learned some things for myself. So God bless you. Please stay part of our Autism Tree family. If you want us to start putting your gigs on Autism Tree or something, like I think we should put it out with the Lunch and Learn where your show is going to be, and any other links you have, we would love to include on there. And just know we record it, so if you ever want to share this amazing job you did today, we will be using it for sure. Already know a couple people I would like to send it to.
Oh,
So
lovely. Absolutely.
thank
Just
you.
happy to help. Happy to help if I can.
Well, thank you for doing an excellent job. And thank you to everyone for being here today. And I know we've been building the Lunch and Learn community since before the schools closed. And I feel like a lot of you that are on here today that you met, Brian, have really been helping us build this platform. And it's an incredible resource for our community to use. So we hope you use it too and stay in touch.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. And I love this. This is really like this, there's so many times where when we're working on something, there's a negative aspect that we have to consider, whether it be a job or this or that, there's a cost. This is what you guys are doing is there's just only good from this. There's only, help, reinforcement, the understanding that no matter how much we kind of feel like we're on our own sometimes, that ultimately we're not. There are a lot of other people who get it, and I want other people to know that. I wish that I had known that when I was a kid, and that's what you guys are doing, and I love that. That's the stuff.
Thank you.
I hope everybody has a wonderful day. This is bright and mind for sure. So thank you so much, Brian, again, and we'll see you guys next time.